Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Hazards of the Old Ones, Part 3, Chapter 7, An Alleged Pirate. Last week, we witnessed the exciting rescue of Lady Poe from the dank, dark, dismal depths of the Shade Church. The Black Hats were interested in her command of Silvertech, were impressed by her skills, but if you think that was going to give her some sort of soft reception, some sort of privileged existence, you are mistaken! They were going to make her fight to the death right off the tick. And Poe, being a cultured lady, had no intention of fighting anybody, and even if it cost her her life, she would just sit there and passively endure. That's who Lady Poe is. A very docile, very milquetoast sort of person, but she has a rare courage that she's not going to do anything she does not want to do, including fighting some filthy crawler in the Shade Church to the death. Fortunately, she was rescued by Cara Hill, by Lieutenant Kylos, or Madame Kylos, I always get that mixed up, and by the Duke of Olin and his Goshawk gang, including the lovely Tori Jane of Wham. They engage in a heated battle with the crawlers, with the adepts, with the Holgismen, and with eventually full Black Hats, and turned into a huge battle. Black Hats tend to always, they concentrate on a familiar, something that they can summon up very quickly. It's a complex thing, forming shadow tech into complex shapes, machines, and creatures. And so they always have a familiar, one that they can whip up in just a second. And Tori Jane's, it tends to be snakes, long snakes, and they were devouring crawlers and Holgisman's whole head first. Ooh, that doesn't sound like fun. Sig, as you know, as her little familiar, is a little model plane size version of the Seeker, which can lay down a tremendous amount of fire. Even though it's little and cute, it is deadly. The Duke was using his Fenister Whip, and that is the Los Capricos weapon of the House of Olin, this Fenister Whip. And it is a whip that can stretch out much longer than it should, and it usually just cracks the head off of a victim. Usually just take your head right off, and he was using it to disgusting effect. Madame Kylos was blasting away with her SK. Peter, one of the Duke's Ruthven friends, set off a charge that blew out the top of the cavern, exposing the daylight, and there was Sage flying the Goshawk, mounting Cara Hill. They all get in to make their escape. Poe is beside herself. She's like, we cannot leave without Sig. I know she's here, and even if she's dead, we need to bring her home and bury her on Dead Hill, where we can mourn her as a Blanchford. And Cara Hill says, well, just look away. And they look away, and they hear this disgusting blood sound. And then all of a sudden, there's Sig. He had her in his stomach. He rescued her as the Black Hats were trying to remove her child from her belly. Unfortunately, Cara Hill was there to put a stop to that. But he didn't have any place really to put her, so he swallowed her whole. Poe then discovers that the little Finn's fish that she put into her mortal wound actually did the job. It saved her life. It healed her and her son. Well, her son wasn't injured, but since Sig gets to live, so too does her son. She's just out right now. I mean, she needs a lot of rest, and she's going to be pretty sore when she wakes up. But as far as being in life-threatening danger, that has passed. Finn's took care of that, and Poe was just astounded. Like, I can't believe this little fish that I made, a toy, essentially, could do such wonders, but he did it. And then, as they make their escape, they find that the Black Hats aren't just going to let them go. They are coming after them in force, and that's where we left off this week. Part 3, Chapter 7, An Alleged Pirate. So let's see how this fracas plays out. Let's begin immediately. I'm dying to know what happens. One of Davage's initial thoughts about Lieutenant Verlin, this attractive lady of the House of Hobby, was whether or not she didn't mind getting a little dirty. The test with the SK in his office proved she was capable with her hands, but this display, coat off, sleeves rolled up, turning tools under the open panel of a read data station was some handy work. She had been under there about 20 minutes, pulling out cabling, rerouting this and recentering that. The main sensor was coming on and going back off at an alarming rate. The ops crewmen and the missive stood there shaking their heads. Larson brought her a cup of coffee, which she thankfully accepted. Several B-Venture X2 modules had been brought to the bridge from engineering. These unwieldy consoles were normally used to calculate stellar Mach jumps, a process that required reams of calculated data in order to be performed safely. Any stray light normally used about 70 of them strung together in the bowels of the ship to get the data out in a timely fashion. These units were hot spares from the reserves. Lieutenant Larson was busy stringing them together and powering them up from extra leads at the missive station. Soon, Verlin emerged, and with Larson's help, connected the read data board to the units. Cleaning off her hands, she punched a few buttons. Now, Captain, we should have enough scanning and processing power to... The lights on the bridge flickered and the holocone went black. Cursing in her howl accent, Verlin got back under the panel, Lieutenant Larson kneeling down with her. They bandied back and forth for a bit, and then the holocone came back to life. Verlin stood back up. I'm sorry about that, Captain. She began pressing buttons, Larson watching and offering suggestions. Now we will be able to follow the thin Shadowtech trail at speed, and our sensor range will be temporarily tripled. Davage was impressed. I see, and well done. Crewman Sassy, he said, turning to her. Do you have a fix on the trail? I do, sir, she said. It's faint but readable, and at speed. Please forward to helm. Lay in a pursuit course, winding for maximum possible speed. Aye, sir. Lieutenants Verlin and Larson, again, I am impressed. Pity I cannot have two first officers. Lieutenant Verlin, will you please man the navigator's position, and Lieutenant Larson, will you please deep scan ahead for the enemy vessel? I want to know the moment it comes into scopes. A short time later, Sig opened her eyes. She tried to rise and found her chest was very painful, too painful to sit up. Looking around, she saw a smiling but rather swollen Poe sitting next to her, holding her hand. And also there was Kylos. Kylos? Kai? She said weakly. Is that you? Poe? What's going on? She saw Carahil nearby. Carahil too? Carahil twitched his whiskers. Welcome awake, my countess. He nuzzled her cheek. Still mad at you over the pie thing. I'm glad you're still with us to be mad at me, he replied. Kai smiled, unbuckled, and slid towards her. It's me, Sig. How you feeling? I'm fine. Where did everybody come from? It's a long story. I'll tell you later, Kai said. Sig squinted. Poe, your face. Are you all right? I'm better now, seeing you awake, hearing your voice. I was so worried about you, Sig. Sig looked around and tried to sit up again. Dav, where is he? She said, rustling a little. Why isn't he here? I want to see him. I want to see him. You're on a ship, just not the Seeker. We're trying to link up with it. Again, it's a long story. Tori Jane unstrapped from her seat, kissed the Duke, and slid out of her chair. She leaned against the bulkhead and looked down. Hiya, Sig, she said cheerfully. Not now. Kai said, sensing pending trouble. Sig strained to look at her. Do I know you, madam? Sig noticed the shadow mark on her face. Tori smiled in a toothy fashion. You sure do. Sig rustled about. Well, your pardon, please. I cannot recall your face, which follows, seeing how you were once a black hat. That's right. You've never seen my face, and I've never seen yours until now. Let me help you out. My name's Tori. Tori Jane of Wham. Sig's eyes flared, and she struggled to sit up despite the pain. Tori Jane of Wham? The painter I hate? The same, and right back at you. For the sake of my Duke, I'm trying to be civil. And for the sake of my friends and my sister-in-law and my lord, I'm doing the same. But if you want to meet, I'll meet you anytime, anywhere. Really? Well, how about right now? Kai stood up, and Poe, alarmed, put her arms around Sig in a defensive fashion. Ladies, please, Kai said. Look, I'm certainly not one to talk about holding grudges and things, but anything that happened between you whilst you were black hats best ought be forgotten. She tried to kill me once, Tori said, after you left me to die on the field. Yeah? Well, big deal. You put my temple to the ground in Wham, with me still inside. And you painted me into a death illusion. Kai got between them. If you two have a score to settle, that was in another life, when you were black hats, but you both have moved on. Can't we call it even? We cannot, Tori said.
I want her blood,
she said in an ugly black hat voice. She looked back at the Duke and blushed, ashamed he had heard that. Well, the moment I'm better, we're going to settle this once and for all, Tori Jane of Wham. For the sake of my lord, whose example governs everything I do, I'll not kill you, for he shan't approve. Just give you the best beating of your life. And I'm going to distress that pretty face of yours and pull out some of that black hair. Fine, Sig, let's mix. I'm going to break my fist all over your face, Carrot Top. I've been waiting for this for years. As have I. The Duke looked back. Tori, that's enough. Let her be, will you? Tori Jane returned and sat back down next to the Duke. She sat there and stewed. Poe knelt down over Sig. Sig, I'm going to tell Dav about this when I see him. You're not going to be fighting anyone. That's not something a proper countess does. Well, Poe, don't be an old lady, will you? This is between me and her, countess or not. And don't tell Dav either. I'll tell him myself, for creation's sake. Sig squeezed Poe's hand. Poe, I owe you my life. Me and Dav and our son. We owe you everything. She laughed. You're my sister, Sig. I'd do anything for you. I'm glad my silly little Silvertech fish was able to heal you. I'm astonished. Actually, there's nothing silly about him. The things you can create, wondrous, simply wondrous. I couldn't do what you did, and I can't think of many black hats who could have done it either. You're a lot more powerful than you give yourself credit for. Poe, holding Sig's hand, looked down to the floorboards. Then I guess I'll make a whole bunch more and set them loose in the Telmus ponds and streams. My future nephews and nieces will need them, no doubt. I'll expect many of them. The castle, the grove, laughing and bursting with the sounds of life. I can't wait. Sig smiled, thinking about her son and the many children that were to follow. Nor can I. Poe beamed and stroked Sig's cheek. You mentioned planning a party for Dav. I'm going to hold you to that, Sig. I've already got a bunch of ideas I'd like to share with you, and don't tell Parduk about it. She'll try to boss in. I won't, as long as you promise to consider allowing Lord Probert to be your escort. Poe laughed. Deal. All this talk of Silvertech reminded Kai of something. She got Tweeter out. He just sat in her hand. He looked uncharacteristically tired and sluggish. One of his silver wings hung limply to the floor. He could barely stand on his little silver feet. Pardon, Lady Poe? Tweeter here seems to be sick. Can you help him? Tori, interested, watched. Poe looked at the tiny silver bird in Kai's hand. He's only got an hour or two left, Lieutenant. Do you want me to get rid of him for you? Kai was alarmed. No, no. Is there anything you can do for him? This little guy saved my life. I don't exactly remember what happened in those dark tunnels, but I do know he was right there with me, and he guarded my sanity, and he got me out. Whatever was in there, he got me past it. I was hoping he'd last forever. He's my good luck charm. Well, he's timed, Lieutenant. A tweeter will only last for a few days by design. I can make you a brand new one if you like. Once I've charged up a bit, he'll be exactly the same. She shook her head. No, this one. Me and this little guy have been through a lot together. This one, Lady Poe, please. He's important to me. Can you do anything for him? Poe thought a moment, then stretched out her arm and waved her fingers. She then touched Tweeter's little silver head, and then touched Kai's cheek, and suddenly Tweeter burst with light and was flush with new energy. He hopped onto her shoulder and chirped just like normal, fluttering his wings. Tori, watching, sucked in her breath. Sig did too. Incredible. There, Lieutenant. Now as long as you live, he'll live. Kai beamed and rubbed Tweeter's tiny silver head, all smiles. Thanks, Lady Poe. Thanks a lot. I can't tell you what this means to me. Hear that, Tweets? It's you and me for the duration. He chirped. Sig painfully lay back down. Any thoughts on when we'll link back up with Dav and the Seeker? We still have to find the Seeker, Kai said, Tweeter jumping around on her shoulder. There was an alarm bell from the cockpit. We might not be linking up with anybody. We're in bad shape, the Duke cried. Kai stood up. What is it? Our friends are back, in force, and they're gaining on us. Can we hold our own? Can we match speed? We can, but what about the opposing force of ships coming in at 9 p.m.? We're about to run headlong into them. Tori, we need that cloak. You have something, Lieutenant? Davage asked. Yes, sir, Larson said. On the cone, through the enhanced sensors, a blip popped up, followed by hundreds of other blips. Sir, we are detecting what appears to be a League ship being pursued by a force of unknown vessels. Actually, it's 4 ships flying in a tight combat box. Heading 2 p.m. mark 5 a.m. of Heron. They're heading in this direction. Can we identify these League vessels? Larson spoke up. They're not fleet vessels, sir, but their configuration appears to be League. The lead ship is flying no colors or tax ID. It is, however, broadcasting a 4-point encryption package, probably for the purposes of navigation between the 4 ships. I recall seeing this particular encryption in the latest call sheet of suspected pirating vessels in and around the League. Sir, if I am remembering correctly, it is thought to be used by the Duke of Olin. The Duke of Olin? Allegedly, sir, yes. Verlin spoke up. And that's not all, sir. We are detecting an opposing force of unidentified vessels 9 p.m. of 4 a.m. bearing in on his position. He'll be engaged any minute, sir. Composition? Over 100 vessels. That's what he's got in front of him. Davage rubbed his chin. What is a rootless pirate like the Duke of Olin doing out here in all of this? Probably running a load of something and got ambushed, that's what I'll wager. Possibly, sir, and again, his current status is alleged pirate. Orders, sir? Larson asked. Davage thought a moment. He walked to the front of the bridge. Sig. He couldn't lose her trail. Lieutenant, should we divert to assist the Duke, will we be able to reacquire the Black Ship's trail? Unknown, sir. It's rapidly dissipating. Can we lock in and map ahead? We are at our horizon, sir. No further mapping is possible, save continuing on. Oh, I see. Damn the Duke. He got himself into this. Let him get himself out. Your orders, sir, please, Larson repeated. Duty calls. A League citizen is about to be cut to pieces in between 2 hostile forces. Duty be damned. His Countess is out there. He remembered Admiral Sai. He remembered his pledge. Defend life. Protect the League and its citizens, wherever they may be, whomever they may be. Sig was there. She listened to him take the pledge. He took a deep breath. Beat to quarters. Navigation marked this position and then set course to intercept League vessels maximum possible speed. The Duke of Olin might be a bloody alleged pirate, but he's a League citizen. We'll save him, then arrest him and resume our search for Countess Blanchford. Davage unsaddled his carg as the klaxons went off and the crew jostled into position. Prepare for battle. Tori looked miserable in her chair. I told you, Fall, they know who I am and they know my key, she said, pointing to her shadow mark. They'll use it to tear my cloak right back down again. What are you talking about? Kai demanded. Every Shadowtech female has a key. Each shadow mark is unique, rather like a fingerprint, and that is her key. If one's key is known, then it can be used to partially undo their Shadowtech creations, painted illusions included. Sage's voice crackled in over the comm. We're about to be engaged from our right, 9 p.m. and closing fast. I see them, the Duke said. Tori rubbed her forehead. Wait! They have my key, and that's a fact. But if I put enough power into the cloak, they won't be able to drop it right away. It'll take time. She got out of her chair and went to the cargo door. Raise containment, please, she said. There was a hum, and she opened the door. Open space whizzed by on the other side of the field. Lady Poe, I need your help. Poe stood. Whoa, my help? I'm so low. They drain me. I need a few hours. Any little bit will help. Please. Poe, walking on her painful feet, made her way to Tori's side. Johnny's voice cracked in through the comm. They're on us, Fall. No good running. I'm tired of running. Let's badger. Johnny, keep your throttles pegged and stay on course. Through the open door, they could see Johnny's Goshawk open its guns and bank hard, the computerized thrusters on his ship configured to mimic in-atmosphere flight. The Duke shook his head and opened his SAR beams. Everybody hang on. He then banked into the swirling masses, guns squealing. Peter and Sage followed. Soon the scene was full of swirling black ships and barreling Goshawks. Carahill loped up to the front. Duke, if you see any large, greasy-looking black spheres emanating from enemy ships, you're going to want to avoid those at all costs. You! The Duke roared, skidding the ship into a savage roll. Are you going to do anything? Are you going to help out here, or are you just going to sit there and do nothing and suck up our air? Oh, honestly, Duke, I'm not breathing. Are you going to help us out or not? Are you asking? Yes, I am. Get out there and help us. Do something. Destroy some ships. Kill somebody. Carahill rose up and clapped his flippers together. Okay, he said happily and then loped away. The Duke looked around and rolled the ship, blasting his SAR beams. What did you do? Hey, what did you do? Duke, came Sage's voice over the comm. My chronometer just jumped. Mine too, Peter cried. Creation! Lances, we're going to be swamped. Over at the open cargo bay door, Tori had painted a large arcane symbol out in front of the Duke's rolling, tumbling ship. Outside, ships, black spheres, red SAR beams, and lances of deadly Shadowtech mingled. The comm was electric with callouts. Roll, Peter, roll! Hit, good hit! For creation's sake, get out of my way! Watch where you're shooting, Johnny. Sage, you're skidding. You're skidding. The bar, Sage, kick the bar. Watch the sphere. Watch the sphere. That's it, Johnny. Johnny boy. Tori's key stood in place, matching the ship's movement. All right, there it is. Lady Poe, give me your hand. Tori took Poe's hand, and the symbol immediately got brighter. Good, Tori said. More is needed, Poe. More power. I'm trying, but I'm so low, they drained me. Peter called out. Duke, there's another ship entering the theater. It's a Feet vessel, Straylight class, flying the colors MVF Seeker. I never thought I'd be glad to see one of those, Johnny shouted. That's our ship! That's Dav's ship, Kai cried. With a crash of light, the huge Seeker blasted into the clogged, chaotic theater, its main sensor searching about like a cyclops eye. Banking its wings, it waded into the rolling mass of ships, canister and battleshot batteries erupting. The weight of its massive firepower cleared out large areas of Shadowtech ships at a time, but as always, they didn't stay down. They stretched, broke apart, reformed, and attacked again. The Goshawk ships used the Seeker's mass as a screen. "Tori, where's my cloak?" Almost, nearly there. Lady Poe." Poe panted and wheezed with the strain. "I've got nothing left to give." No, it's not enough. Not enough." As Tori and Poe struggled, a small hand joined theirs. Sig, leaning against Poe, she laced her fingers in with theirs.
Sit back down, bitch.
Tori said in an ugly voice.
Make me, whore.
She said in an equally ugly voice, adding her power to their combined effort, leaning against Poe to stand. They were speaking with their black hats' voices, and it was hideous to hear. Outside, Tori's key went to white light. "Wait!" Kylos cried. "What about the Seeker? We need to cloak her too." "Kai," Tori cried, "cloak a monster ship like that? We don't have enough power to cloak ourselves yet, even with this bitch hanging on here." "Watch it. That's my lord out there risking his life, and he gets cloaked too, or you die right where you stand," Sig said. "Your lord?" Tori spat. "Hitching his wagon to a bimbo like you, that's his loss." Sig and Tori started squeezing hands, hard. They relentlessly stared at each other. Poe, her hand caught in the middle, winced in pain. Ladies, I... Cara Hill loped up to them. "Here, the trouser toucher wants to help out." He lifted his flippers and began tickling Lady Poe about the waist. Astonished at first, Poe then uncontrollably laughed. "Cara Hill, what are you..." Suddenly, Tori's key expanded in white-hot energy and disappeared. "That's it! That's got it! We're cloaked! Yes, the Seeker too!" The Duke rammed his sticks. "Johnny, Peter, Sage, pull up hard till 1 p.m. and stop firing." Kai sat down next to the Duke. Duke, we need to reach the comm on the Seeker. Let him know what's going on." "I'm doing that now. Good creation, a fleet vessel, and here I am with my trousers dropped." Sig and Tori continued their hand-squeezing duel. The only one who seemed to be suffering was Poe. Ladies, you're breaking my hand," she piped.
Too bad it's not your neck, Sig,
Tori said in her black hat voice.
That lord of yours must be blind or half stupid to shack up with...
Suddenly, Sig let go, hauled off, and slapped Tori hard across the face. She flew back a bit, recovered, and charged Sig. A moment later, they were arm in arm. They slammed against the bulkhead, grappling for punching room, kicking room. In a flurry, they twisted down to the floor. One of Tori's Mako boots flew off in the process. "Stop it!" Poe shrieked, pawing at them in tears. "Stop fighting!" Kai waded in and moved Poe aside. "Break it up!" she yelled, well practiced at stopping fights from her early Marine days. She just about had them separated when strands of silver and Shadowtech came coursing out. They were roping each other. Cara Hill stepped in and stopped them, wrapping them both up in Silvertech until they cooled off. Sig, in worn-out shape to start with, was hardly able to move after the ill-thought-out fight. And with that, we conclude Part 3, Chapter 8, or Part 3, Chapter 7, An Alleged Pirate. I totally forgot about that. Now, Sig and Tori have a bad history. When they were in the Black Hats, they were enemies. Even though they're in the same sisterhood, they weren't friends. In fact, they were enemies. They were actively trying to kill each other. I guess they had history going back where they betrayed each other or failed each other, and one tried to kill the other, and one left the other for dead, yada, yada, yada. They still have it out for each other, even though they're no longer Black Hats, and their rivalry will continue on into the Temple of the Exploding Head books, where they're always at each other's throats at a social level, playing pranks on each other, doing all kinds of things, trying to humiliate each other in public, and it's kind of a humorous sort of side thing. And even though Tori can't stand Sig, she would eventually come to love her children, and she considers her husband, Captain Davage, a good friend. But for Sig, they just can't stand each other, and we see that here at the end of the chapter. So we find out Sig wakes up. She's fine, but she's pretty sore and is going to be pretty weak for a while as she recovers. Lady Poe affixes Tweeter, whose energy was almost at an end. She fixes his life force to Kylos's life force. So he extracts this a little tiny bit of her life force on an ongoing level, but he will live as long as she lives. And then one day when Kai has her son, Sebastian, it's one of her goals to have Lady Poe transfer Tweeter from her to him at the appropriate time. But Tweeter is a constant fixture with Madame Kylos. They're always together, and eventually, way down the road, Kai becomes the magistrate of Blanchford Village, and using Tweeter, she becomes known as a manhunter. Tweeter can find pretty much anything, or you ask him anything, and he can get you where you need to go. So it helps her out greatly in her profession, but that's a whole nother story. So next week, Part 3, Chapter 8, is The Duke's Cargo. And this is probably one of my most favorite chapters in this whole book. I just think it came out well, and I like how it plays out. So we see the Duke and his Goshawk gang were in a heated battle with Shadowtech ships, the Black Hats. In comes the Seeker, charging in, taking some of the heat for them. And eventually Tori, along with Poe and Sig, managed to put enough power into her key that she is able to cloak them and they can escape. So that's where we are. Next week, Chapter 8, The Duke's Cargo, one of my favorites. And I can't wait to share it with you, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did writing and preparing it. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.